Hi, Glenys.
Hey, Aaron. What do you want to talk about today?
How much I hate diets.
Yeah, diets suck.
So what do you do instead of a diet?
Intuitive eating. Health at every size.
So how many times have you had to explain intuitive eating and health at every size to someone?
Like 5,000 times. But that was just to my doctor.
Okay, so how many times have you explained it to someone and then they said, but diets are the only thing I know?
That's like every time. Can we pursue health without thinking about weight?
Yes, we can pursue health without thinking about weight.
That's pretty revolutionary, what you just said. But what if you just don't like yourself at the size that you're at?
I think we need to understand why, instead of just saying I need to change.
So what's the deal with body positivity?
Oh man, that's a long answer. I'm Aaron Flores.
And I'm Glenys Oyston. And we are Dietitians Unplugged. Yeah, welcome back.
Another episode of Dietitians Unplugged.
We are sounding jaded today because we've been fiddling with technology for the last hour and 15 minutes trying to figure out some stuff. And then we just decided, we should this is our episode.
Talking about the inner critic.
This is yes. And we're like, do we continue with this? Do we do it? We're rushed. We've got another thing coming.
Well, let's pause. For all those folks who just freaked out,
yeah.
It doesn't mean, do we continue with this like the podcast? We are going to continue this podcast. Don't jump out. Don't get out.
No.
Take a couple steps back from the ledge. Relax.
I'm not communicating.
This is going on.
Well,
we are going to continue to do this podcast. No, we just we spent about an hour just trying to figure out what is the best way to record these podcasts with new technology. And now we think we have it all set. And then we're backed up until our next interview, which is in just a few short minutes.
Yeah. And
so we had a whole outline of things we wanted to talk about.
Yeah. And now, you know what? I think we just go unplugged.
Well, we are the Dietitians Unplugged.
I say we get unplugged, unhinged.
Man.
We're a little unhinged right now.
Well, okay. So, welcome to this episode.
Hey, welcome.
Here we are.
Take a deep breath, everybody. And we're back. And
it's good to be back.
Yes.
Before we go into too many things, I just wanted to sort of touch base on a couple things first, because the inner critic thing is we
are going to talk about that because I think that's really a relevant topic for everybody.
Did you say irrelevant?
No, relevant.
Okay.
Relevant. Oh God, did I say irrelevant?
Maybe.
No, relevant. No. Relevant. It's for all of us.
Yeah. Just as a way of always doing in our podcast, we just want to talk about things that are going on work-wise first, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure that I announced I'm really thankful to Rachel Milner, who's another body trust provider, and we are starting our first online group together, and it is going to be starting at the end of April 29th. And I think it's going to be really cool. We are going to talk about the intersections of body trust, which is essentially learning how to tune into your body, embracing those intuitive eating and health at every size principles, but really looking at weight inclusive self-care and the intersections with Judaism. So it's going to be an online class. We'll come together as a group online for 6 sessions where we'll talk about the body trust components. And then we're compiling all these amazing Jewish readings that contextualize it within that lens. So I think it's going to be a really interesting group. I'm really excited to get it started, especially with Rachel's. So if you want to sign up for that or want more information, just email me at aaronfloresrdn@gmail.com. And we are going to explore some really interesting topics together. So
that sounds
reach out.
amazing.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing. And I'm working on something that's kind of secret right now, but I am going to say that I want to hear from you if you are pre-diabetic or have diabetes and you're sort of struggling with how to care for that. Through a health at every size lens. So I without saying a whole lot more about what I'm doing, if you're interested in that topic, I actually just want to hear from you to say, yeah, that is actually an interesting topic to me and something I need help with, because I'm working on something with someone and it's so early stages right now that I can't say much more about it. So email me at Glenys at daretonotdiet.com. Or if you just go to my website and use the contact form, that works too. Gets to my email. So yeah, that's sort of what I'm thinking about these days. And of course, we're still seeing clients. What I wanted to say was that, I think a lot of people think that they need to have an eating disorder, a diagnosed eating disorder, to see a dietitian. And we definitely see people with eating disorders. But there are a lot of people out there, I think, that are really struggling with, like, it's just been years and years of dieting. And a lot of people come to me and they're just like, I don't have an eating disorder, but I don't feel good about the way I'm eating. I'm kind of like, I don't know about my weight right now. And they're just feeling really lost. And I feel like, if you're sort of struggling, reach out for help, because you don't have to have a diagnosed eating disorder to talk to a dietitian or a health at every size dietitian or intuitive eating person. And yeah, I was just thinking about that recently.
And how many people do you think sort of fit that bill? Like
So many more than people are diagnosed with an eating disorder. So the population that's actually diagnosed with an eating disorder is small, even though we think that there are probably so many more people out there that could be diagnosed with an eating disorder. But those who are diagnosed, the population is small. And then something like 70% of the population is dieted at some point. Doesn't mean that they come out with really messed up eating, but there are many people who have dieted their whole lives. Like, since they were children, they were put on diets, and they just really, their self-care was never allowed to sort of grow and flourish. They weren't taught the skills that, you would want to learn to become an adult, to look after yourself. And those are sort of some of my clients where they're just like, I want to look after myself, and I actually don't know what that looks like. And then I also suffer from this desire to eat everything in sight all the time, or mindless eating, or eating is the way I take care of myself, but emotionally it's the way I take care of myself. So, if that's upsetting for you, the way it's working, because I say the question to me is, how do you feel about your eating? Like, that's what I want to ask clients. Like, if you're feeling upset about the way you're eating, then let's talk, kind of thing. So I think there's a lot more people out there than have actually eating disorders, probably, that could use some help with self-care and feeding.
I would agree. And I think the main issue that I sort of see with that is that people see working with someone like us and seeing so much shame in it. And typically this is a very shaming industry. I think our colleagues who are not focused on or using health at every size or intuitive eating principles or body trust principles are bringing a lot of shame into the room. So I think when people traditionally think of a dietitian, they maybe think of walking in and feeling judged about what they eat, what their body looks like, and they're not quite sure what it's going to look like to work with someone when those things are in the room. And I'm wondering how much that plays in. And then we, as we think about what is the inner critic, right? I think people's inner critic is, why would I want to be exposed to that? Right? I'm hard enough on myself anyway. I don't need someone sitting across from me telling me something that I already know about how uncomfortable my eating habits are, or how uncomfortable I am in my body. And so I'm wondering how much that plays into people picking up the phone and saying, I'm not going to work with, I'm too worried, too scared to work with a dietitian.
Right. And I think maybe on the other side of it too, people are afraid to come to us to say, you know what, I'm just not happy in my body and I really do want to lose weight. And I think they're afraid we're going to say, how dare you want to lose weight? And that's like, no, like, I think that you and I totally get that. And we totally get this desire that people have to lose weight. I might not be able to help you lose weight, but we can honor that and work with it.
Yeah. No, I agree. So let's talk about the inner critic. Let's talk about our inner critics.
Let's talk about how that just came up just now.
Yeah. So backstory, right? We're sitting here and we're trying to figure out technology, and then we're realizing, hey, we got to record this episode that we sort of had outlined. And I look at the time and I'm like, well, we don't really have as much time as I think we really want. So we have a couple options. We could scrap it, do it sometime later this week or next week. Now that we figured out the technology, right?
Yeah.
A mission accomplished there.
Yeah.
Or we could put together something quick. And my first response was, I feel like if we don't record an episode, we wasted our time.
Yeah, because my other option was we just don't record anything and we go and get some lunch.
Yeah.
And that's when you looked at me and said, I feel like my inner critic is telling me that I'm a failure if we don't record something.
Yeah.
And then you looked at me and said, doesn't yours tell you that? And he said, oh no, my inner critic gives up really easily.
Yeah.
Especially when there's food involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think this is a great like impromptu topic because I think one of the things that I want everyone, I want my clients to know, but I also want everyone listening to know is that I have, and I think we all do, we all have inner critics that are really, that can be really loud at times and really challenge us. And so, you know, I don't mind sharing, like my inner critic is, you know, it really comes out at a few different times. And it comes out when, like today, I feel like I did not make the best use of my time. I like, if it says on the calendar between this time we will do X, and I feel like by the end of that time, I did not do X, I feel like I wasted time because time right now is really important. And we both juggle, and I bet you most of our listeners fit into this. We juggle many balls in our life between work, between family, between all the other things that might come up. It's really hard to keep them all in the air. And so when I have 2 hours, 3 hours set apart to do podcasting, I want to feel like I've accomplished that goal because I'm taking time away from my family to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same way. It's like, you know, it's a commitment to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my inner critic is there more in terms of like, oh, I'm never doing it right. Or whatever I've done is just not good enough. That's my inner critic's loudest thought, most consistent thought, which is there's a million better ways to do this. And you didn't even pick one of them. And I have to really have a talk with my little inner critic. And it's like, you know what? One of the ways I picked was just fine. But it's hard because my first thought is I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that resonates with me also. I think the other times my inner critic flares up is definitely work related. If I had a bad sort of session or a bad day, or I feel like, again, this is like very like, this fits within my sort of past experience of me working with a dietitian right at 15 is like, if I don't feel like there wasn't some like progress on some level, or something didn't go the way I thought it would in a session, like I can get my inner critic flaring like, maybe I'm not very good at this.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh God. Yeah. It's terrible to admit this. It's very feeling a little vulnerable about that, but because ultimately I can get through it and say, no. I'm doing okay. I'm doing good work here. I know when I'm genuinely needing help or needing to do something better, but it sucks to have that sort of be the first voice. And I think it's sort of, I look back on like, where did this voice come from? Where is it? What are its origins? It's not always important to know where the voice comes from, but I think it's important to know the things to say to it.
Absolutely. I would agree. And I think I would almost argue that it's probably our default, is our inner critic.
It's the safety voice because it keeps us from risking things, because risk from an evolutionary standpoint is probably bad on some level. And so I think that it's the voice that tells us to give up, right?
Yeah.
And that's safety in a way. That's our like primal brain, our it's our paleo brain. See, this is why you can't trust paleo man.
Yeah, right.
He's got like a hella bad inner critic. So, and it's the safety, but we can sort of look around in our modern lives and it's like, well, this isn't a huge risk that I'm taking right now. So I don't need that safety mechanism to kick in.
Yeah. And I think about how again, if this is like our protection, right? And it does keep us safe. I think, again, we learn it from childhood, and that when you're especially growing up, and if you are perceived as different, right? How are you treated at school? How are you treated amongst your peers from a very young age? And so to be different is almost unsafe. So we protect ourselves so that we do fit in, and I think we are reinforced that being vulnerable at a very early age is maybe something that is not acceptable. So we keep it inside.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, vulnerable, I'm sure a long time ago meant that you would die. But that's sort of being physically vulnerable, but
Sure.
Being emotionally vulnerable can sometimes be useful. I think, especially if we're sort of opting for that vulnerability.
Right. So I know that we have a lot of other friends listening who are dietitians, right? Who are, I know a lot of people who are not dietitians and lay people are listening, but we do have a lot of friends who are clinicians or working in this field in some capacity. And I'm sure they have their own inner critics too, right? That definitely pops up for folks. And, I think it's important. I think it's important we hit the record button today to share that this actually comes for us.
Well,
right?
We were having such a good conversation, and I just looked at you and said, "This is the podcast. Just like hit record. Let's do it."
She actually said, let's do this just unplugged.
We are unplugged.
And I was reminded, that's the name of our podcast.
Yeah, if we can't be a little nuts here, then really, what's our name for?
Yeah. So here's where I would like to sort of ask then is, or sort of us talk about is, if we have our inner critic and we're supposed to be also helpers and healers in this work, how do we resolve that? How do we personally work on that?
Well, number one, I have a therapist.
Okay. Yeah.
That's like number one important for me. And I think a lot of dietitians do, especially those of us working in the eating disorder world. It's so important to them. Like, we're taking on a lot of other people's stuff. So I think it's important, as somebody, I value reaching out for help when I need it. Like, I can't be my own therapist. Mm-hmm. And so it's sort of like, well, if I value somebody, if I think that I'm important enough resource for someone to come and, see me, I have to feel that way about other people where I need help and I can't do it. So I definitely am a big reach out for help kind of person.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's been great at giving me the tools for those kinds of the times when those voices come up. Like we talk about, I think she said in the addiction world, they have this idea that like first thought wrong, which is like the first thought that pops into your head isn't necessarily the right thought. So I can sort of sense myself feeling bad. Like I don't usually have coherent thoughts around. The inner critic doesn't really speak really well in clear thoughts. It's more like feelings. Like I just start to feel down or sad. And it's like, okay, I have to become aware. So I'm learning mindfulness. So I have to become aware of the feelings. And then what are there thoughts associated? Or like, am I feeling something in my body? And what is it? Where is it coming from? So I would say some mindfulness learning mindfulness has been really helpful for me. And just becoming aware that, this is maybe monkey mind running away with my thoughts, and it's not real. It's not accurate, I guess, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
So it's funny you mentioned a therapist because I'm shopping for one right now.
Yeah.
And that's a interesting process because I think my inner critic comes up just shopping.
Really?
Yeah. Because
just the idea of getting a therapist, or the idea of it's how do you find one?
Yeah, like how do you find
how do we find one that we don't already know?
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah. And so I've reached out to a lot of friends to say like who would you recommend? And thinking about, what I want in a therapist, and sort of starting to journal about that a little bit, so that I sort of know what I'm looking for.
I love how organized you are around that. I literally opened up the internet, typed in some words, and I think I called maybe the second person that I saw, but I actually did look and see what they had to say to describe themselves because that was important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think, so yeah, I'm in the middle of shopping. So
yeah,
well, hopefully that
you're going to be getting a lot of calls.
Seriously,
soon.
Right? It's a lot of solicitations.
Aaron, yeah, be my client.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really the purpose of this episode.
But it's
Send your resumes too.
But we do, we were at an event yesterday together and there were easily more therapists than there were dietitians there, I think. And I realized we know or potentially know. I mean, it turned out my therapist knew many people that I knew.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. Which in a way actually was so helpful, I thought.
Yeah.
Because she already kind of knew the people in my world.
Yeah.
Not that I'm talking about those people or anything. It's more just you get
world.
This thing, this place that I'm at.
Yeah.
She gets sort of body positivity to some degree and that kind of thing. So but shopping for a therapist is no joke. So and I stumbled onto mine. She's an expert in mindfulness, and I didn't know that that's what I was looking for. I was looking for I'm an anxious person. Just baseline, I'm an anxious person. Always have been, and it's not getting better as I get older. But it's not, it's also not out of control. So, but she was like, well, I definitely help with that, and it's mindfulness, and I've loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess that's one thing.
Yeah.
But I think the other two things are this. I think why my body trust certification was so important is because not just professionally, but personally, I think that, those 6 months training with Hillary and Dana and the rest of my cohort was personally just so important because we learned together about vulnerability. We learned about sort of this notion of being able to share ourselves with someone and to come into a conversation and say, this is what I'm dealing with, but have others who had learned about empathy be able to say, that sounds really hard. What do you need from us right now? As you were talking about stuff. And that was so helpful because it really made me realize, if I have a connection with people who are able to provide empathy, how healing that is. And so these regular phone calls with people have become side therapy. So I have one group that I meet, we still talk every Thursday at 10 a.m. and we connect. And it's there's only, a handful of us. And each time there's no agenda, but we sit and just share. And that's so helpful because I think that resource there helps challenge that inner critic on a really regular basis.
Yeah, I think you're touching on something really key, which is support and finding people who get you.
Yeah.
I think is so important. So even if you can't afford a therapist, which is a lot of people can't, but finding people who sort of get you and get your world, I think is so important.
Yeah.
And social connection period. I realize sometimes our jobs have us being fairly solitary. We're working with clients, but we're not working with other professionals necessarily really closely, at least in our private practice. And for me, I need to be around other people frequently that understand what I'm doing. And it's just really helpful to, and then you can see yourself reflected in those people a little bit where they kind of show you what you are,
Yeah.
And,
absolutely.
And so sometimes I have to look at the evidence around me when the inner critic is out of control. It's okay, hold on. No. How do people feel about me? How do people react around me? How are, would somebody I know say this about me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think the last thing that I found is really helpful is because of, again, this body trust certification, because I've read, some Brene Brown books and embrace that idea of being vulnerable, is that they're even at work or at home or wherever, I really do have more and more people coming in who are a part of my life that I can be vulnerable to, that I can go into work and say, I'm feeling, this is what I'm feeling. right? This is the environment or the emotions that are coming up related to our work together, right? At Center for Discovery, I have some people that I can do that with. Here I can, have some supervision calls where I can do that. It allows me to sort of talk through those things and feel like I'm heard and seen. And same thing at home, like sometimes when, I know I need to like say like, this is a story that's going on in my head about what's going on. And I need, this is a story that's going on and this is how, I'm feeling about it. Like, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think all of those things are learned. Like I did not grow up with those skills at all. So I think they're skills that really I've learned, I would say relatively recently in my life, and maybe it comes with maturity and maybe it comes with, just the work I'm doing and the natural progression of my life. But I've learned more skills in the past 45 or 50 in being 45 than I have ever really
in the 44 years before that.
44 years, exactly.
Yeah. So when you're working with your clients and they're sort of talking about their inner critics, I mean, I feel like it's so much easier to deal with somebody else's inner critic than your own. So when you're working with your clients, what are sort of the things you talk about to help them with their inner critic around like food or body?
I think I go right to shame, and I talk and I will name how that sounds, right, and how that that inner critic is looking at this cycle of identifying what the problem is, right, and oftentimes the problem is someone's body, that it doesn't fit the ideal, that it's not a thin body, and then the inner critic goes on from there because that's what's been identified as the problem, but that's all shame driven, and then the fixing that comes from it. Of identifying that our body's a problem and what ways do we have to fix it are again rooted in shame behaviors, and that's where that critic just sort of tends to flourish and live. And that's why thinking about what is the compassionate voice, I think about how can compassion challenge your inner critic?
Right. Yeah, I like to have people sort of, what's the shame thought, right? And then what's the more compassionate thought for yourself? Or what's not the true thought, but what is the more compassionate thought?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can certainly argue about what is true and what is not. But what we need is compassion around these things. And so sometimes even just like in my online course that I run, I, have people write down the more compassionate thought. I think it's important to write things down too. I'm a fan of journaling. Some people are more stressed out by it, but if you don't mind writing things down, I think writing down the thoughts goes a long way to replacing those immediate negative thoughts that come into our head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I need to be in the right headspace to write.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's not something that comes natural. So I tend to be very sort of thought driven.
Yeah. And it's something that comes really natural to me, but I have to have the time to sit. And right now I have no time.
Yeah. I find I do that. I honestly, I think I've done my best thinking is when I drive.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And sometimes I just need to go for a drive.
Yeah. That's funny. I drive a lot for one of my day jobs. And actually on my way here, I was driving and I was so lost in thought, deep in thought.
Did you miss the exit?
I was a little worried that I'd missed the exit. So, and I was trying to count the exits between, Wood Lake and here, because I was pretty sure it wasn't just one exit, like you said yesterday.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, driving is really, I like to turn the radio off too and just drive in silence, which I think most people think is really weird. But I just like that sort of, that's one time I don't mind like getting lost in my monkey mind. It's just like very entertaining where my brain will go. There are other times when I'm really trying to practice mindfulness, and it's really important to sort of quiet my brain and just listen to what's present and listen to my breath or listen to the sounds around me.
Yeah.
Yeah. But just sort of doing your deep thinking, it's kind of useful. So if that's the tool that works for you, then use that. I always say, like, don't use the tool that somebody tells you must use.
Yeah.
It's just not going to work for you.
Yeah. No, it's a great point.
Yeah. Compassion around that. I think I had a friend who said, I was told that journaling was going to help me let everything, get rid of all my anxiety, my thoughts and whatever. She says, but it actually gives me more anxiety. I said, so don't do it.
Yeah.
Like, that's not the thing for you. Find the thing that is for you. That takes work and experimentation, but we shouldn't have, once again, the shame comes up around the thing. I can't do the thing that's supposed to let me get rid of my shame. So I feel ashamed.
So the inner critic then
the inner critic's like, why can't you journal? I'm like, don't journal then.
Yeah.
It's that easy.
Well, I think the take home is that we're human, right? We're all dealing with these things. And I think we're trying to figure out
I think the
real good solutions for it.
Yeah. I think looking at the standards to which we hold ourselves, like, I think it's important to be good to other people. Like, what are your values, right? Like, I think it's important to be good. But for a long time, I thought it was important to be perfect. And that's ridiculous. Yeah. Like, who's perfect and what is perfect? What is that? So figuring out what your values are and then trying to live them and like letting go of all the other crap that filters in the societal messages of you're never good enough.
And I think, again, so I might get like a kickback for talking about body trust so much and doing the certification, but as part of the certification, like I had to write a ethics statement, and like essentially identify the values for work that I want, and a manifesto. And I think that process helped so much because I thought about, this is what I want to, like, these are my values, both personally and professionally, that I want to live by. Super helpful.
Yeah, that does sound really helpful.
They're on my website. Check them out. They're pretty good.
Yeah. I think you showed me and, or you put them up on Facebook at one point.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Someday if I have time, I'll do the same. but time
Maybe
is elusive for me right now. Yeah. But my time is about to free up in about a month and I am so excited.
All right.
And I'm trying already not to stack a gazillion things into the free time I'm going to have. And that's another inner critic thing, which is like, oh, you have free time. You should do all this extra work. And understanding that I actually need a lot more downtime of just like playing Candy Crush on my iPad or watching mindless TV, like, or staring into the sky or something. But like my inner critic just feels like you got to do it all right now. So get going.
Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of trying to do some self-care around giving myself time.
Well, Glenys, thanks for prompting us or encouraging me to hit record.
Yeah. I think it worked out.
Yeah.
We hope that you liked this episode.
Yeah,
it was not what we had planned at all.
But we'll do that one.
Yeah, we'll do it eventually. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think that I hope people enjoy or resonate with us being vulnerable, right? And sharing what we each struggle with and why and how we are working on doing more self-care from a place of compassion and empathy and curiosity.
Yeah. And I think that it can work for just doing the work can work for everybody in whatever situation, but it's figuring out what that work is.
Absolutely.
And I think it can really help around food and body shame too. So
for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Glenys.
Peace out.
Peace out.
Thank you for listening. This has been another Dietitians Unplugged production. You can find Aaron at bvmrd.com, and you can find Glenys at daretonotdiet.com.